We're here today on Country Pocket with Barry Oreck. The new album is We Were Wood. I want to, I'm going to structure the interview slightly differently today because I want to break this up into uh, introducing with a song that's a little on the less productive side, and then move on to a second segment where we're talking about moving forward. So usually I end the show asking the artist to pick a song. This time it's coming in the middle. The first song you just heard is called Build Me a City. Barry, how long have you been in New York?
I moved to New York in 1983. So um, do the math. That's 43 years, the beginning of 83.
Good long time. So Robert Moses predates even your time there.
Right.
How did you learn about this history?
Well, yeah, I've heard about Robert Moses and I've had ideas about kind of what he did, but it was just a few years ago, it was probably 2022, I started reading The Power Broker by Robert Caro, which is, a giant tome, which is now in 24. Last year, it was 50 years old. So it was certainly not a new book, but reading that just completely changed how I saw the city, my whole view of the problems we're facing now, the physical infrastructure, as well as where people live, how people live, the whole suburbanization. It kind of all goes back to Robert Moses, and many people don't know that. So it took me about a year to read the book, and a few months to write the song, and it's sort of my view now of this place I love and this place I live.
So, for those of us who aren't as familiar, who was Robert Moses?
Well, he was a brilliant man on many, many levels. And he was not ever elected to a city office, but he was appointed by many people to various commissions and became part of the Triborough Bridge Authority. And really came to power, and this is, soft power because he wasn't elected, but he was in charge of highways, parks, urban renewal, parkways and parks on Long Island, and at one point had 9 different positions in city and state government, all being unelected. And this happened from the 30s, early 30s through the end of the 60s. So we're really talking 40 years where his power was more than any mayor or any governor of the state of New York. He really was the guy with the power, primarily because he was the guy with the money.
And what did he do to New York that makes him so notable all these years later?
Well, this was happening all over the country in the early 20th century. Was this transition to the automobile, and all cities were thinking about how to incorporate highways and upgrade bridges and do all of this. But Moses had a particular talent for both political operations and a brilliant mind, so that at the beginning of the Great Depression, when a whole lot of federal money was about to be brought into transportation and other projects to try to stimulate the economy, Moses was all set and ready to go with bridge plans and highway plans. And in his dream city, there would have been highways crisscrossing the entire city of New York, Manhattan, and every where cars could go. So he is responsible, or under his regime, most of the bridges we have today, George Washington was a little bit before him, but the Triborough, the Whitestone, the Verrazano, the Throgs Neck, the Battery Tunnel, um, and then many construction projects, including most notably the United Nations, Lincoln Center, Manhattanville, which is now the Park West Apartments, and projects all over the city. Hundreds and hundreds of public works projects were under his direct control and authority.
So for people like you and I who have spent a few decades in New York, his imprint is all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. When you realize that under his regime for more, almost 40 years, not a penny of the tolls went to the New York City coffers. For not a penny went to mass transit. Not a penny went to any other solution other than building more roads and more bridges. And even back in the 30s, they knew that every time you build a new road, traffic gets worse. They had figured that out right with the Triborough Bridge. It's like you're not solving the problem of congestion, you're actually just making it worse. So if you kind of look at the imprint of all of these projects, which moved people moved people to the suburbs, destroyed many vibrant neighborhoods, middle class, lower class, just working class neighborhoods all over the city. Um, and now we're facing, these issues where we need congestion pricing, where we're trying to reclaim some of the shoreline for the public, for parks and recreation. All of these things that we're facing now were basically Robert Moses projects and his dream of a car city where people live out in the suburbs and drive their car to work. This is very much what we're facing today and trying to undo to whatever extent we can.
So yeah, he definitely got his way with his vision. I would say Nassau County, especially maybe by the time you get out to Suffolk County, where I am, it's much more of a self-sustaining exurb sort of situation.
Right.
But Nassau County is really just I mean, it feeds so much into the city, and the city feeds so much into Nassau County.
Right.
Um,
And, yeah. A lot of it, is choices. It's not like, oh, well, we shouldn't have roads. Obviously, we need roads. But for example, on the Long Island Expressway, the big southern curve that it takes was to get around some huge mansions that destroyed a whole bunch of farmland. So there was no public process that decided where roads would go or how, whose property is going to get protected. He made his reputation in Long Island by opening up the beaches to New York City residents creating those parks. So that was a huge Jones Beach and all of the Southern Shore beaches, were Moses projects. But there was also, this is a well-known fact, he designed the overpasses too low for buses. So city buses could not bring people on public transportation to Jones Beach. You needed a private car. Um, it's diabolical in lots of ways, but this was the kind of person who would think through all those details.
yeah, he was a visionary, but maybe not necessarily a good guy concerned about the working class. He was unelected. He wielded unimaginable power. Um, could anything like that happen today?
Well, Trevor, we're living with it. It really is the playbook of intimidation, of using bald power and money to grease the wheels to do things that may not be in the public interest. He definitely was a precursor of the Trump playbook and did it excellently. Had the newspapers in his pocket, all the banks and financial institutions, the contractors, they were all getting the largesse of Moses and the authorities, the Triborough Bridge Authority and the others.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if Trump is the neatest parallel, um, because with Trump, he actually ran for office, got elected, um, but I think Musk may be the clearest Robert Moses we have today, except instead of knocking down neighborhoods, he's knocking down structures in the government.
Right.
Uh,
Right. And, the thing that's hard, and I think, I tried to capture this in my song, Moses was really a genius. I mean, he worked harder than anybody. And the way he got so much done was, he knew where to be, how to do it. He had both the people and the engineering expertise. So besides being brutal and illegal in lots of ways. He was not apparently in it for his own financial gain. And so, I think that's another difference was he was able to do a lot of this because, he lived this lavish lifestyle, but he himself was not taking the money, unlike our current leaders.
uh, so this is a folk song explaining some of New York City's history. New York has quite a folk tradition as well. You're living in the city right now. Um, what is that folk tradition like today?
It it's pretty amazing. It's pretty, it's vibrant. And I come from Chicago, and that was, me at the time I was growing up was an incredible folk tradition. And I kind of grew up with that, with activist folk singers and kind of blues and folk and all these threads kind of coming together. Um, and New York doesn't have at this point that many, as many folk clubs as it used to, or Chicago does. But I think that there is a, powerful both performing and song circles and bluegrass groups and Celtic groups. And, I've just really kind of entered into this folk world full blast in about the last 10 years, and it's just amazing to me, the breadth of it, and both old music and new music is exploding all around us.
So you're only relatively recently connected with this tradition.
Right. I mean, I've been playing my whole life, and I've been certainly playing and writing songs. I was mostly in professionally as a dancer, a modern dancer. So I did dance and theater pieces and, played music on the side. But in the last 10, 12 years, music has become my full-time gig.
So who today would you point to as one of the people leading the New York folk tradition most proudly, getting the right things put out there, getting the right leadership across?
Um, that's a good question. And because I write a lot of songs that are about social issues and history. I have sort of found myself in the People's Music Network and People's Voice Cafe group. And thankfully, it has some young blood, and there is a real building, I think, of a multi-generational community there. Whereas I think for a while it's been a bunch of us gray hairs, talking about how great we did in the 60s. And at this point, I'm happy to say that People's Voice Cafe and Art House Brooklyn is another new venue that's great. Jalopy is another Brooklyn place that really kind of supports what I would consider to be the activist folk singer tradition. People writing songs about issues and ideas. And whether they're protest songs or just like a lot of mine, which are just histories, and I thoughts about the present and the past. Um, I think that tradition is alive and well, and People's Voice is definitely a leader in that.
I'd like you to choose a song that represents all that, something something that's come out of one of these organizations.
Um, well, of those songs, maybe so someone in the sort of younger generation of people involved with People's Music Network, who I really respect, is Dilson Hernandez, and he does a mixture of hip hop and folk and Spanish and English, and just really a beautiful blend. So one of his tunes called Washington Heights. It definitely, feels like music coming out of the roots of New York. It's just a nice kind of new blend that I think he does just great.
All right, for someone with your folk music pedigree, I'm not sure I was expecting something that would cross over genres so much.
Well, I he's got some that are more in the kind of straight folky vein. I would have to dig a little further to find that, but I like all kinds of music, and I'm definitely a crossover guy. I'm a big jazz fan and other Latin music.
All right. We'll be right back with Barry Oreck. The new album is We Are Wood.
We were Wood.
We Were Wood.